So shall we begin, Lumpur?
As you wish, you're in charge.
Okay. So great. So brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, we're very glad to welcome Lumpur Vajiro here with us today on Saturday, 17th of August. For all of us who gathered here from all over the world, we've seen people from New Zealand, from Australia, from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Thailand, from the UK, Scotland, and all over the world, and also from the USA. So at different time zones, we're all gathered here to be receiving the Dhamma from Lumpur Vajiro. So let us all now put our palms together and respectfully and sincerely offer Lumpur our 3 bows. First bow, please. Second bow. And third bow. So Lumpur would like to now invite you to kick off the session by leading us in the guided meditation.
A sense of welcoming and a sense of settling. All the shuffling and the sitting and the moving around. In this particular experience, here, now, this time, this place. This particular life. This particular sensory experience. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. Received. It's given. Offered. How is it received? It's knowing. It's knowing. It's knowing it's like this. It's knowing. Collected. Gathered. Welcomed. Given attention. And released. Life. Received. And release. This rhythm. This experience. In this particular time and place created here, now, here, now. Welcoming, well-wishing, realizing here, now, this time, this space, this particular, in this knowing, known. This practice awake, receiving life, giving life, unfiltered in this knowing of knowing. Particular now and here, this time, this place. This welcome gathering, the energy, experience, fully received, completely released. Practice of knowing, the knowing the heart, not seeking, not rejecting, this knowing. Understanding this limitation, this time, this place, this now, this here. And this knowing is particular but unbound, unbound. Let's see how this goes, this joining in this knowing, this time, this space. This silence. I have a fascination with beginnings and endings. And as you probably know, the Lord Buddha's teaching is only interested really in the end of suffering. Yet there's still a sort of question. Well, how did it all start? How does it all go? What's the connection? All this talk about causality, but they don't really explain. And I feel a little bit like the poor person who asked the Lord Buddha that and was in, well, that's not what I'm talking about. You'd die before you knew who'd shot the arrow, who'd made the arrow, where the poison came from, if you were hit by an arrow. But there are hints, there are bits in the scriptures, and digging them out and or stumbling across them. There's a sense of, well, sometimes they talk about food, and food is always interesting, isn't it? Always interested in good food. What's it do? And causality, the causes and conditions for something, if they're there, the thing will be there. And if the causes and conditions for something are not there, the thing will not be there. And yet there's a cause. And how does it all begin? Well, what feeds it then? If you can't find out the cause, then what feeds it? And it's interesting talking about food, because food, that talks about food in a few ways. The basic food for monastics is this thing of wisely reflecting. I use alms food, not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for helping with this holy life. Thinking thus, I will allay hunger without overeating, so that I may continue to live blamelessly and at ease. So that's a way of relating to food that is, as they say, yoniso manasikara. It's wise reflection. It's going back to the root. Well, what's food really for? Because we know what food does, of course. It goes in, and then it eventually, we hope, comes out. And then having been through a transformation. And that transformation is interesting because, well, what's muck to some is manure to the other. So the food itself is food for something else. And that's interesting. So food, and then the food is something that is repeated. Yeah. If we keep doing it, we keep eating, keep experiencing, and then keep processing. And in that sense, the food that's the nutriment that's talked about, the four nutriments of, physical food, sense experience, kamma, and consciousness, they're food. And those foods are described in pretty frightening ways if you look those up. the first food, how one should relate to food that one eats is as if one was eating one's child, because that's all that one has as one's crossing a desert. That's a way of relating to physical food that's described in the scriptures. And then there's the food of sense experience. And that's pretty frightening too, because that's described as being like a cow without a skin covered in flies. And the irritation that cow must experience. Cows get pretty irritated by flies anyway. New Zealand, they have their tails cut off, and sometimes in other parts of the world where there's cows covered in flies. Well, imagine a cow without a skin covered in flies and what sort of irritation that is. And recognizing that all sense experience is a sort of irritation, because if it wasn't irritating, then it wouldn't be experienced. There has to be some sort of irritation at the senses in order for there to be any sort of experience. And that's the sort of thing about Vedana. Vedana is how things are experienced, pleasant or unpleasant. And that's the movement towards or away. And the neutral is that which is, when it's not known, there's a tendency to go away. And when it's known, there's a tendency to go towards, because neutral is actually quite peaceful. It's not too exciting. So that's food. And kamma, the intentional action, chetana, is wholesome or unwholesome, and that's described as being pulled towards a fire by two strong people. Well, that's frightening. If you're not terrified by having to eat your only child or be like a cow without a skin, then being pulled towards a fire by chetana is pretty scary as well. And then consciousness, being stabbed 1,000 times in the morning, 1,000 times at midday, and 1,000 times in the evening, that's pretty painful. And those are the four nutriments which we digest in one way or another, incorporate in one way or another, or shift and transform in one way or another. That's the way that humans are, and this life is. So four nutriments are like this, but doesn't give me anything about causality, really. That's what I want to know. How come there's all this ignorance? How come there's all this ignorance? How come we don't understand what the heck is going on? What's the food for ignorance? Well, in the Paticca it's death, but well, that's interesting, because the Paticca is the dependent origination. And if you go back from ignorance, you get to grief, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, and death. So that's interesting. And then, well, what does that mean? That's the paccaya, that's a cause, it's a more direct causal condition. But in terms of nutriment, what feeds nutriment? What's that about? And then the Anguttara Nikaya has lots of lists. Anguttara Nikaya is a great list thing, put together by people, I think, who are planning on having Zoom meetings sometime in the future to give lists for people to talk about. And these lists are like sort of something to contemplate. I find the lists quite helpful. And the food for ignorance is called the five hindrances. The five hindrances we've heard about. If you've done any sort of meditation, somebody's talked about the five hindrances. Nivarana, this thing of getting caught in sort of sensual thoughts and bits and pieces and trying to enjoy yourself, or just trying to get caught in anger and resentment and wanting to get rid of. And then the subtle forms of those, which are mixtures, which are sloth and torpor, which is a mixture of both aversion and sensuality, because it's just like, I don't want to notice anything, so I'll get comfortable by not noticing anything. Or restlessness, which is, don't like this, I want the next one, don't like this, I want the next one, which is all because you don't know what to do, which is doubt. So the five hindrances are the food for ignorance, nutriment for ignorance. And nutriment is also like food is maybe a pretty gross way of doing it, but nutriment is like something that is absorbed, yeah? It feeds it, like the nutriments that one has in, a Petri dish that feeds the bacteria. It's a nutriment. And so it's the food for it. It's not necessarily a very conscious sort of taking it in your mouth and chomping on it, but it's the nutriment for it. And it's what it feeds on. And then we can go, the way these lists goes, of course, there's a nutriment for the five hindrances. And that's fun. Because it's the three unwholesome actions. And humans, they act mentally. And this is action is a conscious action. These are sort of dwelling in terms of things that are unwholesome. Jealousy, hatred, pettiness, self-importance, unwholesome. And which goes out into speech. Okay, you speak and you go communicate. Get on Twitter or whatever it is that you get on nowadays, or write letters or angry emails. And this communication, it feeds the five hindrances, is nutriment for the five hindrances. See what one's doing, or acts in ways that are unskillful. It's a nutriment for the five hindrances. It feeds, and that feeds ignorance. So, but just looking at different, it's like maybe it's a 10 or 12 course meal that you're looking at, and all the side dishes that go with it. But it's interesting because you've got, a nutriment also for the wrong courses of action. Food for that is lack of sense restraint. Lack of sense restraint. Sense restraint is a funny thing, because these senses, they are sensitive. It's their nature, and they're sometimes described as wounds. And when we went back to the cow without its skin, and the senses are sometimes described as wounds. So be careful with them, cover them sometimes, put balm on them. Be careful about where the energy goes. Sense restraint is praised. It actually increases sensitivity, strangely enough. Not being too sensitive can actually be more sensitive, strangely enough. The classic case of this is when one is dealing with something that's toxic. One's dealing with a poison or something that's poisonous, then one puts on gloves so that one can be careful around it. Or if one's around a fire, then one uses fireproof gloves or protects oneself in some way. So protecting the senses is actually a way of being more sensitive, more careful. If you don't overwhelm them. And indulging the senses is a way of self-harming, which is like trying to get too much pleasure out of something is actually a way of, again, deadening the senses, overstimulating the senses. So sense restraint is helpful because it keeps one from feeding the unwholesome courses of action. We don't practice sense restraint because we don't know what we're doing it and why we're doing it. We're driven by ignorance without sati sampajanya, without a clear knowing of the time, the place, the causes and conditions, what's happening with the body, the Vedana, the Chitta, and the Dhammas. We're not practicing sati without sati sampajanya, mindfulness and clear comprehension. Because the food for that is yoni manasikara, not actually considering what is this for? What is this for? It's yoni manasikara that we talked about at the beginning with food. What is food for? Not for fun, not for pleasure, not for fattening, not for beautification, only for the maintenance and nourishment of this body, for keeping it healthy, for helping with this holy life. Thinking thus, I will allay hunger without overeating, so that I may continue to live blamelessly and at ease. This consideration of the nutriment of food. You know, there are similar phrases for the monks for clothing, shelter, medicine. And there are groups of people. I think Thich Nhat Hanh is one of the ones that has little gathas or phrases about how one relates to things, so that one relates to things in a ways that is with yoniso manasikara. One knows what one's doing and why one's doing it. Wise reflecting, I use the mobile phone not for distraction, only for communication and finding out information. Yeah, wise reflection. And wisely reflecting, I use this sense of working out or considering how to use things so that they bring blessings and are not a curse. This wise reflection. And why is it that what feeds that? What's the nutriment for that? Because we don't have the confidence that it's worth doing. There's lack of faith, lack of confidence in the efficacy of actually wise reflection. We don't actually, it's not worth it really. It's too much trouble. It's just laziness, just a lack of faith because we don't feel that it's worth it. We forget. Just follow along. We don't even think that it's worthwhile, maybe. A lack of confidence. We don't actually even hear that it might be possible. We don't actually even notice that it might be possible. to act wisely. We forget in this moment. No, it's a hindrance, isn't it? Forgetting. Doubt, the opposite of faith. It's not wrong. You can work with it all. And this goes back to or goes down, or goes up, or goes round, to what this holy life is all about. Thinking thus, I will allay hunger without overeating so that I may continue to live blamelessly and at ease. What is this holy life all about? Associating with wise and good friends. That's what really, really helps. Not associating with wise and good friends is what feeds lack of faith. Well, not hearing the right teaching. Not hearing the right teaching means no faith. We don't hear that it's possible from our friends, from whatever we associate with, and we don't have the faith to actually consider what we're doing. Not having the considering what we're doing, we don't have the mindfulness to actually be careful about what we are doing and when we're doing it and how we're doing it. And then our sense restraint is not there. We act mentally, verbally, and physically in ways that are not skillful, and of course that feeds the 5 hindrances, which feeds ignorance. But it's useful, those ways of that. That's a 9-course meal, actually. The 10-course meal adds craving to the top of ignorance. Ignorance is a food for craving. Craving is that sense of compulsion, that sense of lack of freedom, the sense of I have to, I need to. This is what has to happen. If I don't have this or I don't get rid of this, and that's to go back to the Four Noble Truths, that is to be abandoned. Yes? Craving is to be abandoned. That's the noble and worthwhile way to relate to craving. Yeah? So to go work out from the beginning, the whole of the holy life is association with the lovely association with good friends. It is the whole of the holy life. It's not half the holy life, it's all of it. It's all of it. So, so important to really, really associate oneself with good friends. If it's not actual people, then it's to really associate oneself in one's heart with good friends, hear good teachings. And nowadays, gosh, is it easy. Look at what we're doing right here, right now. Everyone in their own particular time and space. All experiencing and the fact of experiencing is equal to all through all this time and space. Throughout all time and all space, outside of time and space, the fact of experiencing is just this. Delighting in this strange experience of complete solitude. This is complete. We are all right now, right here, completely alone in this particular time and space. This is it. And the experience is the same. The fact of experiencing is the same. It's particular to each of us, but the fact of experiencing is the same. This presence here and now, the fact that there is a here and now, very strange, isn't it? Very strange. I mean, it's somehow reassuring in an occasion like this. And even those that maybe look at it in 10 years' time on some strange machine, they will experience this time, this place, which will be particular to that experience. But the experiencing will be the same. The fact of experiencing will be the same. What is experience is always different, always changing, always completely unsatisfactory. That's the nature of it. But finding delight in this solitude. Do I delight in solitude or not? Because this is all we got. Finding a way to access that knowing, the knowing. Having the confidence that that experience of a happiness independent of all conditions, outside of time and space. Having the confidence of that there is that which is beyond time and space. There is an unborn, unoriginated, uncreated, and unformed. What does that suggest? If there wasn't, escape would not be possible. So how to do it? Wisely reflect. What is this life about? Know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you're adding to this moment, how you're receiving this life, how you're responding, releasing this life, how you're responding to this life. Is it a release or is it a clinging or a pushing away? Is the sense of the senses knowing the senses? So there's a sense of knowing what is going out through the senses. Is the attention wise? Attention, manasikara, is like what comes out of the senses. Because the senses, this old thing of that the sound doesn't come in to disturb you, you go out to disturb the sound. You've heard that from Rinpoche. You think the sound comes in to disturb you, but you go out to disturb the sound. That's ayoniso manasikara, going out to disturb something. Or the other monk's phrase of only the disturbed can be disturbed. It's that recognition that what we give attention to, or what we pay attention to, or how we try to manipulate through this attention that goes out through the senses. Ayoniso manasikara. The wrong form causes of action. Because when we do the wise causes of action, the 10 good causes of action, most of it's about speech. And it's mentioned in the basic ones of samadhi, that there are good causes of action. And there are skillful causes of action, then the 4 foundations of mindfulness are nourished. You want to nourish the 4 foundations of mindfulness. There's a thing. The 4 satipatthanas, that which actually keeps safe. If you want to know where to give attention to those four fields: body, Vedana, Chitta, and Dhamma. And then you can turn everything into the four foundations of mindfulness and nourish those. Practice satipatthana, sammasati, the practice of the four foundations of mindfulness. Now practice the Eightfold Path, because that is what feeds the seven factors of enlightenment, the seven limbs of enlightenment. If you want to know what enlightenment looks like, look at its limbs. Sati, investigating Dhamma with effort, and joy in this effort. And peaceful in this joy. And continuity without the five hindrances. And upekkha, a sensitivity that is still and steady, not fixed, but still. Now, the seven factors of enlightenment, well, that is what knowledge and vision is about. That's what feeds knowledge and vision. You know, those are the nourishments of knowledge and vision, the way things are. The seven factors of enlightenment nourish, are nutriment for knowledge and vision. The four satipatthanas are nutriment for the seven factors of enlightenment. Good conduct, body, speech, and mind. This is the good conduct, which is why some people say, if you just practice good sila, you'll be all right. No, if you really practice good sila, then in terms of the eight precepts for lay people, which are about not making a nuisance of yourself through your communication, really. Four of them are about not using your communications in ways that are actually harmful. The five precepts are basic. The eight precepts for lay people are really good. The eight renunciant precepts on moon days that make it give one more confidence. And that will really cultivate the four foundations of mindfulness, or really nourish the four foundations of mindfulness. Cultivation is, it's the manure. The nourishment is the manure. So you turn the muck of life into manure. So you're practicing sense restraint. You know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're contemplating, well, what's the way of making a blessing out of this? Because you have confidence that there must be some way of using this so it's a blessing and not a curse. What are the origins, the properties, the blessings, the curse, and how to relate to it so you get the blessing and don't get caught in the curse? Because you've got good friends. And you are associating your heart with good things, with hopeful things, and with the Dhamma. So you have a way. There is something that can feed and enjoy good friendship. The way of finding good friendship is to be a good friend. That's the long and short of it. If you want good friends, be a good friend. And there are lists about that too. Don't worry, the Anguttara Nikaya has got heaps of lists. So you know what to do. And be a good friend to yourself too. Delight in solitude. That's probably enough rabbiting on from here. Yeah, from now. And so if there are questions, then I'll try and take those. But for now, that'll have to do. And if it's any good, then fine. Fine. If it's not, then leave it behind.
Andamaya Mataya Sadhu Karam Katamase Sadhu 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 Anumodami.
So there's probably about 40 minutes, 30, 40 minutes for questions.
So thank you very much, Long Paul, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brother William and Sister Karina, for doing the chant. They've been anticipating this for a while, Long Paul. They've been practicing, and they were waiting to offer you the chant for the teachings, but you launched into the teachings. So
straight away. There's no Brahma Chalok Pati Pati Saham Pati Katanjali.
But it's wonderful for them to be here, and it's refreshing to hear you speak about
food.
The food, yes. It used to be a menu now, 10-course meal. How wonderful. So I'm sure many of our friends here would have some questions regarding the 10-course meal, whether it's 10 course, whether it's 5 course, 8 course, 7 course. Please feel free to ask Long Paul the questions that you may have on the top of your mind now.
What's on the menu today?
Click on the raise hand button, and we'll invite you to have a conversation. Nabura from Calcutta. Nabura?
Yep. Thank you, Vita. Thank you, Lumpo, for your Dhamma talk. Can you hear me? My question is relating to solitude and balancing solitude with the interaction with the world and the worldly activities. Now, solitude is something that has been praised by the Lord Buddha, and it's an essential part of the practice. But then again, it is also essential for us to be interacting with the world, doing our activities, because that's where we get to understand how we are progressing. My question is like how to balance. Is there any guideline or anything that you can advise us in terms of balancing between the two? Because as a layperson, so we can do this better and spend the time in solitude and the world. Thank you.
Well, you probably know Uran, that the solitude that's being talked about in terms of delighting in solitude is the delight in this moment, now and here. And that the holy life is lovely friendship. The whole of the holy life is lovely friendship. Actually, we are always completely alone. Scary, actually. It's scary how alone we are. It's very, very scary. Because we have no real idea what anybody else is up to. It's all supposition. It's all guesswork. We've got little enough idea about how this body and mind works, let alone about how anybody else's work. And it's not, certainly if you're with things that are toxic or dangerous, then protect yourself just in the same sort of way as you would if you were around toxic and dangerous things. Protect yourself from toxic and dangerous humans. But on the whole, really protect your heart. The poor bhikkhu who went off to go teaching in far off places was asked by the Lord Buddha, well, what would you do if they start shouting at you and screaming at you and telling you off? And he said, I would think, well, at least they're not hitting me with sticks. What would you do if they started hitting you with sticks? Well, at least they weren't stabbing me. Well, what would you do if they started stabbing you? Well, at least they aren't killing me. What would they do if they killed you? And they said, well, then at least I wouldn't have to worry about being alive anymore. So, and so then you can, and that was it. That was, he was considered qualified to go and teach. Nowadays, you don't have to go through that. You just have to get on social media and get all sorts of things happening there. But it's, the ideal solitude is finding a way to appreciate this moment, how much one should go on retreat and cut oneself off, and how much one should be with people and go on, do your job and this sort of stuff, or be with your family. You have to figure that out for yourself. I can't give you a formula for that, because if I say you should do 30% this and 20% that and 15% of the other and 10% of this, well, I've probably gone over 100% already. But somebody else, it would be different for. The balance would be different for. So is your life a blessing or a curse for yourself or others? Is this something that brings blessings to yourself and others? And a blessing is something that is beautiful, is good, is wholesome, that you didn't think you could do. Or maybe you thought you could do and you did it with kindness. And then a curse is when you stop from doing something beautiful and good. And one of the groups of people that I think are making a blessing, because they leave somewhere better than they found it. And if you leave a place better than you found it, then you've blessed the place. If you leave the place tidier and cleaner and more, more beautiful than you found it, then you've blessed it. So one of the people that I think are blessing every day are the people who sweep the streets, people who clear up the rubbish, the people who tidy up. Those people are blessing. They're blessing this world. And that's something very beautiful. And so if in your life, if you leave a meeting in a way that you feel that people have benefited, that's blessing it. And you've blessed yourself, because by blessing others, you bless yourself. You bless yourself, you bless others. This is a way of trying to consider, well, how much time should I be with others and how much time should I be on my own? If you're just on your own and you just wallow and make a mess of things and expect somebody else to tidy up, then that's not helpful. And if you're with others and you just create conflict, then it's not helpful. I hope that helps a little bit. Number, good luck.
Thank you. Lumpo.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have anyone? Yes, and Sophie. And can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ajahn, for your teachings. Yeah, you mentioned, so it's more like a little bit technical on the specific thing you said. You mentioned the 5 precepts for lay people and the 4 about communication. So maybe if you want to expand a little bit on that, or yeah, thank you.
So the 5 precepts are basic for human society. They're quite, I mean, if you're probably on this Zoom thing, you probably know about the 5 precepts. There are 8 precepts for lay people as well, which, if I remember right, they go at the 4th precept, it's not lying, not backbiting, not gossiping, and not frivolous talk. And then there's right livelihood, and I think that might be it. So, which is the 8 precepts for lay people for general use, and then there's the 8 precepts for occasional use, which are for the moon days, which are celibacy, not eating in the afternoon, and not using a high-end luxurious bed. I think that's about, can't remember.
No entertainment.
We got a portion, yeah.
No-
No entertainment, yeah. No internet. I think it's called, which is the 8 precepts. Mala Ganda Vilepanatara Namandana Vipusnatana, no internet, no distractions. So those are the 8 precepts for occasional use for lay. Sorry, that was a bit of a joke. So, it's those, yeah. So you've got those, and the renunciant 8 precepts are ones for gathering energy. Really, renunciation is about gathering energy, because it's making a choice not to leak out, not to fill up stuff. The 8 precepts for lay people are like being careful about how one relates to beings, really. Being much more careful about how one relates to beings, because they're about communication. You know, the 8 precepts for lay people, there are 4 about speech, so communication. So they're about being in the world and communicating, but communicating in a way that is not harmful to yourself or others. And as you always know, the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, they are, for the 8 precepts for lay people and the 5 precepts for lay people, they're about something that you can offer all beings, which is somebody who can be trusted. And it's a gift of fearlessness. The beings do not need to fear you. And also, you don't need to fear the consequences of your actions. So you've got you're giving yourself a great gift, and you're giving others a great gift. So it's an incredibly generous thing. We talk about dana, sila, bhavana, but to recognize that the sila is a gift. It's a joyous gift that you can offer yourself and offer others. So those are the ways of. So some reflections on the precepts. I hope that helps, Anne-Sophie. D'abord. Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone for the next question?
Agnes.
Yes. Sister Agnes, unmute. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lumpur, for the Dhamma talk. May I ask a question about myself? I attended a wake recently, and I see clearly yesterday that I'm not ready to die. There's a lot of fear when I wanted to do meditation last night to dedicate marriage to my deceased aunt. She had met an accident, and she's in her early 50s, and
I'm sorry, can you please speak quietly and slowly, because I can't hear you very clearly. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm feeling a little anxious as I'm processing my fear.
So breathe with your belly and breathe softly. Come into yourself gently, gently. We've got plenty of time.
Thank you. So my question is something like, I was trying to do a death contemplation using my late aunt as an object to contemplate on death yesterday when I was looking at her body, but I realized that there's a lot of fear within me, because I realized that her body wasn't the same like those other disease that I have seen, because she met an accident and there's some bloatedness on her face and the skin color changes. So I went on to Google about the decomposition of a deceased body last night, as I'm trying to help myself to process the fear. And as I'm talking to you now, there's trembling, because I can feel the craving that I have a lot of things not done yet, and I'm not ready to die. So I'm just wondering, will you advise me to stop the death contemplation, or should I proceed to think of a beautiful death that I have witnessed also recently, in the month of July, where my late granny, she had a very beautiful death, and as I'm watching her body as I do the meditation, I place the flowers onto the coffin, and I'm smiling together with her. It's a very beautiful death that I witnessed. So I'm just like wondering, why is this such a contrast between these two different deaths? One is so fearful and one is so beautiful. And yeah, I'm just not sure, like, how should I proceed on? Thank you, Luang Por. Am I clear to you?
You know, can I just repeat and
Yeah.
tell me if I've got it wrong?
Sure.
So very recently,
Yeah.
you witnessed a death where the body was broken up because it was an accident that, or something that damaged the whole body and the face. And then a few weeks earlier, your grandmother died in a very peaceful and beautiful way. Is that reasonably correct, Agnes?
Yeah, in a way. The wake that I witnessed yesterday was a complete body that has been embalmed, but then on the facial expression, I see some bloatedness and the skin color changes. So this is how I associate with the
Okay.
with
So
the photo.
you saw a body that
Yeah.
had been embalmed and was
Yeah.
bloated, and had
Yeah.
been some time since the death. So it wasn't actually a damaged body that had been through some accident, but it was actually just a
Correct.
death that had been of somebody that had then been embalmed.
Correct. However, I actually heard from the family member about how the death happened, and the whole procedures and the whole image, and yeah, it was quite horrible.
Yeah. So you heard more about it, and that also fed into the feeling of fear and disgust and a sense of revulsion. Yeah, and a sense of not wanting to be associated with that, not wanting to remember that, not
Because
wanting to perceive that. And so you're wondering, should I go back to that often, or should I just go to the peaceful death, and which will be more useful in the future and which will be more useful now? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for putting it so nicely for me. Thank you.
I'm just trying to see if I can understand what's happening. And then, you're lucky insofar as you have two.
Yeah, and it's a few weeks apart. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have an experience, and then you're wondering, how can I make this experience something that's more of a blessing and less of a curse? Yes. And so, so the latest death or body experience that you've experienced is one that sort of upsets you more. Yeah, but you still have the previous death experience of your granny, that
Yeah.
is more peaceful. So you can switch your attention from one to the other. Yeah. But go also, particularly go to the physically in your body for that, to that which is not disturbed. So with your belly, breathe softly with your belly, if you like. And then in a sense of whatever wisdom comes from this, may it be shared with all beings. I don't need to dwell on the horrific. I don't need to reject the horrific. Yeah. There's a sense, because if I reject it, then I say, well, I shouldn't see it at all. And of course, that's going to make it worse. Yeah. I shouldn't have that memory at all is going to make it worse because it'll just bring it up more. Yeah. Whereas if you can say to yourself, I'm breathing, breathing with your belly, not with your chest,
Okay.
then a sense of, may whatever wisdom comes from this be shared with all beings. And then a sense of, I wish myself well. I wish all beings well. Yeah. How can I, and because what you're asking here is, how can I transform this experience into a blessing rather than a curse? Yeah. At the moment, it's difficult.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Oh yeah. No, sorry. May I ask? From assessment, do you think I'm not ready to do death contemplation, or do you think I'm ready?
You are doing death contemplation. You can't help it. but you can turn it into a more just satipatthana. Just turn it into Vedana and Citta. Yeah. Rather than going into visualizations of the body or contemplating death, go back into Vedana and Citta Nusati and Dhamma Nusati. Yeah. So you take it out of just contemplating the trying to visualize all the things about death. That you don't need to do. You can go back to Citta Nusati and Vedana Nusati and Dhamma Nusati. Yeah. And with Anapanasati, just mindfulness with the breathing, you can go to that part of it rather than Marana Nusati. Because you've got that's coming up already. Yeah. You don't need to worry about your own death. And you don't need to contemplate that.
Why do you say that I do not need to contemplate my own death? I mean,
because that's happening anyway.
Yeah, right. But yeah, okay. So this happening.
You don't need to make an effort out of that. That's going to happen anyway because of this. Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't want to, and in bringing up the sense of, I don't want to die a horrible death, turn that into Citta Nusati and Vedana Nusati and Dhamma Nusati. Yeah.
Okay.
So that you keep it cool. Because, Buddhism is cool. It's about Nibbana, which is cool. And your realization is for the deathless. And the deathless is cool.
So, am I understanding it correctly? Even though if I do have an horrible death, if I have a horrible death, I might also be feeling cool and zen, like, okay, this is it, something like that.
Well, if you can keep the upekkha, keep a steadiness and sensitivity, then do it. But if it shakes you up too much and disturbs you, then stop doing it. Yeah. Because what's important is upekkha. Yeah. If you go for the factors of enlightenment, this is what's happening. This is the experience. I'm investigating this as Dhamma. I'm and putting effort into this, because that's what you're doing now. You're willing to give this whatever it takes and be happy that you are able to do this. Ask this question now. Yeah. What you've got to get to is a sense of peacefulness with this, a continuity with this, and upekkha. Yeah, that's the rest of the bojjhanga. Yeah, if you can get the bojjhanga, then you transform this into knowledge and vision. And you can do it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's come right at you. And to say, well, I shouldn't be doing this, I don't know. Gently deal with it right now. And that's what you're doing now by asking these questions now. Yeah, you're not rejecting anything. Right now, you're dealing with this as Dhamma. And you're sharing this with others. Yeah.
May I clarify, if I'm doing this contemplation, there's an image that comes up of the disease that she doesn't want to die, like she's crying, that kind of image. How should I like get the image to say goodbye to me?
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that?
In a way, I'm just wondering, when I'm contemplating these two death occasion, there's a few images that pops up occasionally, like the deceased say that they don't want to die and they are crying, because I had the images yesterday night, and it was so horrified that I don't dare to leave my room. It was so scary. Sorry to put it. I'm a very
and that scariness is okay. And don't this is, it's, you know, to push that away is also going to be wrong, but you don't need to dwell on it.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, whatever visions you may have or something like that, it's just dedicate blessings that whatever understanding comes from this may benefit all beings. Yeah. And then you can endure this. You know, come back in 3 months' time, having dedicated more blessings for the benefit of all. Yeah, at the moment it's like this. Yeah, at the moment it's like this. It's hard, but you can endure this, you can work with this.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Agnes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Agnes. We have time for one more question. One last question, anyone? Anyone has got a question, a final question? Going once, going twice.
Tutiyampi, tatiyampi.
Tatiyampi. Right.
Good to see you all.
Wonderful.
Good to see you all.
So,
Oh gosh, all sorts of things happening over there. Oh, well, the kids are coming in. Oh, they're putting things away.
oh, you mean in the Dhamma hall?
Yeah, in the Dhamma hall next door.
Right. So, right, to close the session, Lompo, may we invite you to lead us in the chants, the Buddha's words on loving kindness, and the sharing and aspirations.
Now let us chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be a sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views. The pure-hearted one having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind. With mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor, may the forces of delusion not take hold nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge, unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide, and the Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.